by Hot-Blooded, 1988. Keith was 12 the first time the old man in the well spoke to him. Keith was out playing after dark on the family's small farm near the well. The old well had beams supporting a rope and pulley with a bucket attached, even though Keith was told that well ran dry before he was born. Suddenly he heard someone say his name in a slow, raspy voice. Keith whirled around and saw no one. A look of confusion spread across his face as he heard it again. "Keith." This time, it was said with more force and a bit louder. The voice sounded like one of the old farmers who liked to smoke, thought Keith. Looking down the well, Keith heard the same voice asking, "Have you got anything tasty?" Keith couldn't see anything past the first 12 or so feet down the well, even though it was a full moon. "Who are you? How'd you get down there?" Keith asked. "If you give me something tasty, I'll reward you," replied the voice. All Keith had were some cookies he had stuffed in his pocket as he left to play. He put those in the bucket and it lowered it. He had lowered it nearly 40 feet and was literally at the end of his rope when he no longer felt the weight of the bucket on the rope. 20 seconds passed, and he felt the weight of the bucket again and began to pull the bucket up. As he finished pulling the bucket up to the top, he heard the voice say, "No nice." Keith saw a reflection in the bucket and saw a rectangular piece of silver metal about the size of an army dog tag. It was completely flat and smooth. "Want fresh," the voice said. Even though Keith tried to talk to the old man again, there was no response. Keith made up a story about where he found the metal and took it to his father, who took it into town and confirmed it was an ounce of pure silver. After that, Keith kept it a secret. It took a while to discover that the old man was only there the night of full moons. Keith quickly learned that only live things he put in the well would be rewarded, but only once for each item and once every full moon. So one of each kind of animal was lowered down the well and rewarded. Keith now had a cigar box mostly full of silver pieces by the time he was 16, but had run out of different animals to get rewarded for. It was around this time that a local farmhand went missing. It was also the same time that Keith was rewarded with gold pieces for the first time. Once Keith took over the farm, temp workers seemed to vanish every now and then without explanation from the farm. The old man had finally found something tasty enough to always reward. I always had a problem with sleeping growing up. Many times I'd get sleep paralysis, but after I blessed my room, it hasn't happened in months. This happened to me about a year ago. I woke up in the middle of the night, frozen. If I tried to move, I'd get a really loud ringing noise in both my ears. It would get louder each time I moved. I was terrified. I was too scared to open my eyes, but I felt a presence of someone in the room with me. My room isn't completely dark because I have a small blue nightlight. I open my eyes and see a very tall and dark figure with 2 horns on each side of his head, just standing there, in the corner of my room facing me. I panic and try to move my body. The ringing gets louder and louder and louder, and I can feel myself crying. I close my eyes and in my head start saying, "God will protect me. God will protect me." Then I hear a low, evil voice say, "God can't help you anymore." A young boy lay sleeping in his bed when he heard footsteps outside his room. He peeked out of his eyes to see what was happening when his door swung open to reveal a murderer carrying corpses of his parents. After silently propping them up on a chair, he wrote something on the wall in the blood of the dead bodies. He then hid under the child's bed. The child got scared beyond belief. He couldn't read the writing on the wall, and he knew the man was under his bed. Like any child, he pretended that he slept through the whole thing and hadn't woken up yet. He lay still as the bodies, quietly hearing the breaths from under his bed, An hour passed, and his eyes got adjusted to the darkness. He tried making out the words, but it was a struggle. He gasped when he finally read out the sentence. "I know you're awake," he read, as he felt something shift underneath his bed. I got my first pair of glasses last week. My parents didn't think I needed them at first, but the doctor said that there was something wrong with more than just my eyes that was apparently pretty common, and that I needed specially prescribed glasses for my own good. He said that many people were never given the chance to see the way I would, so I was lucky to get them. I thought he meant cars and faraway words would become less blurry, but over the span of a couple of days, many more things have become more clear. I started seeing nightmare creatures all around. I'd never seen them there before, like in the corners of my room and in darkened parking lots. I took my glasses off for the first time today, and let me just say it's amazing how quickly demons and creatures turn into trees and shadows. I know I'm not seeing the truth, but I'm a simple person. I'd rather things remain blurry, just the way it is for everyone else. We didn't question why the small town we'd found after getting lost in the countryside wasn't on the map. We didn't question why the shopkeeper in town didn't have eyebrows or hair on his head. We didn't question why he looked so strangely, greedily at us. We didn't question why the gas at the station we stopped at was so lure in travelers, cheap. We didn't question why the clerk at the station, where her eyebrows and hair, insisted on making a phone call in the back before ringing us up. We didn't question why the funny man outside by our car let us know that the sun was going down. We didn't question why so many bald people stood on the street, watching us frantically leave their town behind. We didn't question why we began pulling our hair out, or why we decided to turn around and head back to town. We knew why. We make fun of little kids for one thing, leaving lights on everywhere. They turn lights on in every room as if it's some sort of security blanket. And if you ever force them to turn them off, they cry and scream, and eventually you give in. The only time they turn them off is with their parents. They feel safe, so very safe. I'm the monster that lives in your closet. I'm friends with the one under your bed and the one in the shadows. When you see us, you flee to your mommy and daddy. But we're not here to hurt you. We're here to protect you. If you think we're scary, just wait till you see their true form. They masquerade as one of you and you can never tell. You humans must be blind. Your true monsters sleep just down the hall. They pretend to love you, but it won't last. They try to convince us to let them in, but don't worry. We really love you, and we will protect you. So when you see a shadow flit or a figure in the closet, remember, we scary monsters protect you from the human ones. So you're safe with us, for now. When I was a little girl, I used to read at night. I always kept my closet light on. It flowed from underneath the door and dissolved the illusion of darkness with white brilliance. Warm, inviting. I felt so comfortable that I would forget to turn it off afterwards. But one night, it turned itself off. I first met my wife in high school. Her beautiful, sparkling eyes drew me in. They were a reflection of heaven, and her voice, a chorus of angels. I proposed after we graduated from college and we planned our future together. But things have changed since then. She's been acting strange lately. In bed, she'd toss and turn all night, muttering under her breath. Some nights I'd hear other strange noises like faint screams. I still loved her, though. We decided to get married at our local church. Before I knew it, I was waiting at the altar for her to walk down the aisle. I nodded to the priest and signaled to the men sitting in the front row. We pinned her on top of the altar as the priest wrapped her arms and legs in chains. She hissed and howled, her body writhing in agony. The priest grasped the crucifix in front of her face and began the recitation. I wasn't going to let her go. I wanted my wife back. Jacob decided to stay at home when his mother went out. She told him to go to bed at 11, but unfortunately, he couldn't hear her over the sound of his music. Jacob haphazardly waved his mother goodbye as she closed the door. Jacob spent an hour and a half playing with his phone. Games, YouTube videos, movies, music. He even texted his best friend for a while until she no longer replied. He didn't pay any attention to the time until his phone battery hit 10%. Jacob realized that his mother never called or texted him in all the time that he had his phone. Jacob sent her a text. "Hey." No reply. He was confused as to why she wouldn't answer him. She always answered her phone. His confusion chilled into concern as night fell and midnight rose. He sent another. "Mom, where are you?" Again, no answer. "Sweetie?" A familiar voice rang out from behind the couch. It sounded like his mother's, but it wasn't. Not entirely. It was warped, crinkling like folded tin foil. Jacob jumped and spun around, only for thick black hair to consume his sight. "Why haven't you gone to bed?" My bedroom was upstairs. I had a good view from my window to see the new neighbors move in next door early in the morning. There was a man and woman carrying boxes into the house. They must have been a couple. My eyes traveled to the neighbor's vacant upstairs bedroom window, which was directly across from mine. It was open, and inside was a girl who looked about my age. She saw me and motioned for me to open my window. So I did. She leaned out the window, curved her hand around her mouth, and whispered to me, "Nice to meet you. I'm Sarah." I laughed. "Nice to meet you, Sarah. I'm Sam." She smiled. "Keep your window open," she said, and moved out of sight. I was confused. "Keep my window open?" She returned with something in her hand, then tossed it over to me. It was a paper airplane. It slowly and gently made its way through my window, onto my floor behind me. I walked over and picked it up. On top was written "Open." I opened it, and there was a message. "Hey Sam, I'll come over tonight and introduce myself." I thought it was a bit strange, and wrote back, "Come over tonight? What do you mean?" I turned around to toss it back, but she wasn't there. The window was still open, so I tossed it in anyway, thinking she'll reply sooner or later. It was late into the evening, and still no reply from Sarah. My mom invited the new neighbors over for dinner. I figured this is what Sarah meant by coming over tonight. "Honey, come down for dinner," my mom shouted. I went downstairs into the dining room to sit at the table, but I didn't see Sarah, just her parents. I couldn't help but ask, "Where's Sarah?" The man and woman stared at me as if I said something out of place. "Excuse me?" the man said. I repeated myself, "Sarah, your daughter." The woman put her hands up, covering her mouth. Tears flowed down her face. The man stood. "Our daughter died a year ago in an accident. I don't know what you're up to, but that's enough." They both left the house immediately. Mom glared at me. "Why would you do that, son? Just go to your room." A flurry of confusion was spinning in my head. I couldn't speak. I made my way back to my room, turned on my light, and lay on my bed. Then a paper airplane flew through my window, elegantly landing on my floor. I picked it up and looked out my window. Sarah was standing in the darkness of her room. My heart was pounding. She moved closer until the moonlight hit her face, her eyes dark and skin gray. I looked down to read the message. "Behind you." My lights flickered off. The floorboards behind me squeaked, a dark whisper into my ear. "Sam,